The Application Lifecycle Risk Management Podcast, Episode 29, ASP.NET Server Performance Testing. This happened a couple of years ago, but it's still relevant because I know of at least one place where it's still happening, even though Microsoft has fixed the issue that initially caused this hack to be put in place in the first place. So here's the problem we were seeing. We had several large PDF files that the client wanted to put up on the site so that their customers could download them. The problem that we were seeing is that even though the site worked fine under development and QA, the site seemed to consume a lot of memory under load. Another symptom we saw was that the file download took a long time to start, or timed out completely. But the main issue was the memory, because when the memory was consumed, the site would restart. And because it was a worker process crash that caused it, the restart took the site down. This is not something you want to see happening when you're working with a client with worldwide exposure. A client who, if I told you the name, I'm sure you would recognize. In fact, it was the site not responding or crashing that first alerted us to the problem. So as soon as we knew the site wasn't responding, I logged onto the server and fired up Task Manager to see what was going on. Now, one of the things I did early on managing the servers is that I set up an entirely separate app pool for each of the websites we're hosting. This way, we can monitor the memory and CPU activity of each one independently. For those of you who are interested, the way to make the pool name show up in Task Manager is to run the pool in Application Pool Identity, a setting you can get to through Advanced Settings. If you're only hosting one site, you don't need to do this. But in my case, with multiple sites, this told me a lot about what was going on with each of the sites, and ultimately helped me track down what the problem was here. And by the way, you should always run each of your sites in a separate application pool so that when one site is having trouble, every site on your server doesn't have trouble. Imagine having an issue and not even knowing for sure which site was causing the trouble. It's bad enough not knowing what page is causing the trouble. Okay, so I could see the memory increasing as soon as the site came back up. So now to try to track down what was causing memory issues. I tried various things along the way, and none of them shed any light at all on the problem. I even got .memory from JetBrains to see if I could find anything. A memory leak, maybe? No, none of my code had even a small leak. And then I finally stumbled on the issue. I can't remember what it was that we installed that needed this, but what it did was change our web config file so that it had a section in it that has modules run all manage modules for all requests equals true. Now what this causes IIS to do is to run all of your web requests through all of your .NET modules. Why is this a problem, you ask? Because it even runs all of your images, CSS, JavaScript, and other static content. This isn't normally a huge problem because most of that stuff is relatively small. But when you try to run a PDF through that, when you try to run a large PDF through that pipeline, you'll run out of memory because, and this is the major issue here, because the whole file has to be loaded into memory on the server before it can be sent down to the web browser. So make sure that run all managed modules for all requests is either set to false or doesn't exist in your web config file. If you need it to be turned on for some valid reason that I'm not thinking of, at least put your static files on another site where this can be turned off. Now the question that we should be asking now that we've figured it all out is, why wasn't this caught earlier? When a site goes up, isn't all of the functionality, including all of the links to all of the images, the files to download, other pages on the site, and off-site, aren't all of those supposed to be tested? Yes, of course they are. But if you haven't at least written down where all of these things are to check, they'll never get tested, and they'll certainly never get tested in a systematic way. You need to test everything, or you will end up with these kinds of errors once you put your site live. This is to say nothing of load testing along the way. Don't forget to rate this show in iTunes and Stitcher. What's Stitcher? Stitcher is an award-winning free app that lets you listen to all your favorite shows, plus discover from 20,000 news, entertainment, and sports shows. Create custom playlists. Available on the iOS, Android, and Nook. No downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And for the links to items mentioned in this podcast, make sure you check out my blog at blog.dmbcllc.com. A link to this article is in the show description.